The steady hum of the airport fills the space, broken only by the sharp clicking of high heels echoing on the tile floor. It's a routine morning. A soft breeze from the automatic doors brushing against the warm faces of travelers, luggage carts rattling by in a hurried rhythm. But something's off today. A police dog, a large, muscular German shepherd named Rex, paces by the baggage claim area, his eyes scanning, his nose twitching. A suitcase, unremarkable at first glance, sits quietly on the conveyor belt. It's a standard black suitcase, a little worn around the edges, but nothing screams danger. Yet Rex knows. He can feel the threat in the air, in the scent of something foreign, something deadly. The handler, a seasoned officer named Olivia, stands at a distance, watching Rex's every move with silent intensity. She's seen this before. A dog's instinct is rarely wrong. Rex suddenly lunges at the suitcase, his teeth sinking into the soft fabric. The tug-of-war between dog and luggage is violent, the noise of the fabric tearing, slicing through the tension. But when the suitcase is pulled apart, it's not clothes that spill out. Instead, a small, writhing shape tumbles onto the floor. And then another, and another. The room goes cold, the air thick with disbelief. Olivia had been a handler for 7 years, and not once had she seen something like this. Her mind raced as she ordered Rex to release the suitcase, her hands shaking despite her training. The dog obeyed, but his body remained tense, alert. She crouched beside the suitcase, her heart pounding in her chest. The room felt strangely silent, save for the murmurs of the surrounding passengers. Olivia opened the suitcase fully, and what she saw made her blood run cold. Inside, carefully packed beneath layers of clothing, were dozens of small, dark tubes, the kind used for transporting illicit substances. But these weren't drugs. They were something far worse. The airport security team rushed over, and Olivia's breath hitched as she carefully untangled one of the tubes. A strange, metallic smell filled the air. With every new discovery, she could feel a sense of dread tightening its grip around her. The suitcase wasn't just a container of contraband. It was a message. Her eyes darted to Rex, who was now circling the scene, his low growls mixing with the increasingly frantic chatter of airport staff. They hadn't uncovered just drugs. They had uncovered something far darker, something with a purpose. Olivia sat in the sterile break room, her hands trembling as she tried to process what they had just found. Her partner, Lucas, was on the phone with a team of investigators. The suitcase had been flagged by international agencies for tracking, but no one knew why. No one had seen the contents before. The tubes were experimental devices, but their use was a mystery. Outside, Rex lay on the floor, exhausted, but ever watchful. Olivia's eyes traced the dog's every move. He had been her partner for years, her protector in moments of crisis. Yet now, it seemed he had uncovered a threat neither could have anticipated. Lucas hung up the phone, his face pale. "We've got a lead, Olivia. It's connected to a global network of smugglers, but no one knows what they were meant for. The question is, why were they so carefully packed? Why were they transported like this?" His voice trailed off, as if he himself was beginning to doubt the reality of the situation. For a brief moment, the tension was unbearable, suffocating. Olivia thought back to her training, how to stay calm, to think logically, but the unease in her chest was growing. What had they just uncovered? The investigation picked up pace, but the more they dug, the more the puzzle pieces refused to fit. Olivia and Lucas pored over files, photos, and surveillance footage. The tubes, though unmarked, had originated from a small, nondescript building in an isolated area. The further they traced, the more they uncovered evidence of a shadow operation. Late one evening, Olivia received an anonymous tip. The tubes, the strange devices, were part of a larger plan. A plan that could put thousands, maybe millions, at risk. As she stood in the dark, staring at the phone screen, the world outside seemed to blur. The quiet hum of the office was now filled with the weight of her discovery. Lucas looked at her, concern etched into his features. "What now? What now?" Olivia repeated, her voice tight. "We stopped them. Whatever this is, we stopped them." As the storm grew louder outside, Olivia could feel the weight of what was ahead pressing on her chest. She couldn't help but think of Rex, the dog who had been her anchor for so long. Now, she had to anchor him in return. Together they would see this through. no matter the cost. Days passed, and the investigation grew more complex. Olivia's mind was consumed with the case, every moment focused on the mystery they were trying to unravel. But just as the final threads of the operation began to fall into place, everything shattered. A sudden knock on her door, in the middle of the night, left her breathless. Standing in front of her was someone she never expected to see, her former mentor, Daryl, now on the run. "I never thought it would come to this," he said, his voice low and hoarse. "But you have to trust me, Olivia. They were going to use you. They were using Rex. The network, it's bigger than you think." Daryl's eyes were wide with panic as he reached into his bag and pulled out a small, black device, the kind that Olivia recognized immediately. It was one of the tubes, the very same that had been in the suitcase. "You need to get out. It's already too late." The betrayal hit harder than anything Olivia had ever felt. Her trust in the people she worked with, the people she believed were fighting for the same cause, all of it had been a lie. Rex, her partner, her loyal companion, had been a pawn in a game much bigger than either of them. With the threat closing in on all sides, Olivia and Rex launched a final, desperate attempt to stop the operation before it could do any more damage. They followed every lead, broke every barrier, and fought every battle, all while the world outside seemed to close in around them. In the final moments, as Olivia stood facing the mastermind behind it all, the truth became clear. This wasn't just about the tubes. It was about control, power, a game that would never end until someone was left broken. With Rex by her side, Olivia made the ultimate sacrifice, taking down the mastermind and putting an end to the operation. But as she collapsed, exhausted and bruised, she realized that the cost of victory was far greater than she ever imagined. Olivia woke in the sterile white of a hospital room, the beeping of machines and the soft rustle of nurses' footsteps the only sounds that filled the silence. Her body ached with exhaustion, bruises and cuts marking every inch of her skin like a map of the war she'd fought. But it wasn't the pain that held her in place. It was the emptiness that had settled deep inside her chest. She reached for the bedside table, the cold touch of metal grounding her, as she grasped a small photograph of Rex, his loyal eyes staring back at her. Rex. He had been the one constant in all of this, the one who had stayed by her side, even when the world around them fell apart. He was gone now, somewhere in the midst of it all, but he had been with her until the very end, guarding her when she couldn't guard herself. As she lay there, the weight of what they had achieved began to settle. She had brought down the network. The people responsible for the devices, the operations that threatened so many, had been stopped. But Rex had paid the price with her. The sound of footsteps in the hallway interrupted her thoughts. A nurse entered the room, offering a soft smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're awake. How are you feeling?" Olivia nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Where's Rex?" she asked, her voice quiet, as if saying his name aloud would shatter the fragile silence around her. The nurse's smile faltered. "He's being taken care of. He's alive, but—" She trailed off, her eyes dropping to the floor. "It's going to take time, Olivia. He's been through a lot too." She could barely process the words. Alive. That was all that mattered. Alive and waiting for her. There was a small measure of comfort in that, but the nagging emptiness remained. After the nurse left, Olivia closed her eyes and let the tears come, silent and unrestrained. The gravity of what they'd both been through, the betrayal, the fight, the sacrifice, was too much to carry alone. And yet she had no choice. It was time to heal, for both of them. Weeks passed, each day bleeding into the next as Olivia tried to rebuild what had been shattered. The world, once chaotic and filled with uncertainty, had shifted into something more ordinary. Her focus had returned to routine, but inside nothing felt the same. She had been to hell and back, and the wounds were deep. But the hardest part was knowing that Rex was still struggling, trapped in the silence of his recovery. The dog she had once trusted to protect her now needed her protection. The weight of that responsibility was overwhelming. She spent her days visiting him in the clinic, the sterile smell of antiseptic and the soft hum of fluorescent lights surrounding her as she sat next to his recovery cage. His eyes once filled with alert energy, were now clouded with fatigue. His body was scarred, his fur patchy in places where medical tape had been used too often. But when he saw her, the connection was instant. Rex's tail gave the faintest wag, and in that moment, it was as if the world outside ceased to exist. She reached through the bars of his cage and gently scratched behind his ears, his large body still as he leaned into her touch. She whispered softly, "We're going to get through this, together." But deep down, she wondered if they ever truly would. Could they ever be the same? The days bled into months, and Olivia tried her best to keep moving forward. She returned to her role at the airport, though it felt hollow compared to the weight of the work she had done with Rex. The familiar sights, the baggage claim, the luggage carts, now felt foreign. There was a growing sense of displacement within her, as though the events of the past had warped her view of everything she once knew. Still, she pressed on, because there was nothing else to do. Every moment, every task, felt like a way to avoid the crushing weight of her uncertainty. Then, one afternoon, as Olivia made her way through the clinic doors, something changed. She had been expecting another slow, agonizing day of watching Rex slowly regain his strength. Instead, she was greeted by the sound of a familiar bark, sharp, strong, full of life. Her heart leapt in her chest, and she rushed to the back of the clinic, following the sound of that unmistakable voice. Rex stood at the gate, his tail wagging furiously as he jumped up to meet her, the scars on his body faded but still visible, like the echo of their shared battle. There was an energy in his movements, something that had been lost for so long. His eyes locked onto hers with a depth of recognition that spoke volumes. He was back. He was more than just a partner in the fight. He was her reason for pushing forward. In that moment, Olivia realized that the true meaning of rescue wasn't just saving lives. It was rebuilding what had been broken, even if the cracks remained. Rex leaned against her, and she wrapped her arms around his massive frame, pulling him close. "We've both been through hell," she whispered. "But we're still here." Months passed, and Olivia found herself looking back at the operation, the danger, and the betrayal with a strange sense of gratitude. The darkness had tested them both, but it had not broken them. It had shaped them into something more resilient, more determined. Together, they had stopped a global operation, a dangerous secret that threatened everything they knew. And though the scars, physical and emotional, would never fully fade, Olivia realized that there was nothing more powerful than the bond they shared. With Rex by her side, she knew there was nothing they couldn't overcome. The future was uncertain, and the shadows would always linger, but for the first time in a long while, Olivia felt ready to face whatever came next. Together, they were unbreakable. Despite the calm that had settled over her, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something still lingered, just out of sight. The echoes of the past, of the network they had dismantled, seemed to hum in the background, like a haunting refrain that wouldn't quite fade away. She and Rex had survived the storm, but survival didn't always mean the end of the battle. She found herself walking the same airport halls, the same familiar surroundings. But now everything felt different. The weight of the knowledge she carried, the things she had seen, the people she had lost. They pressed down on her chest, a constant reminder that life could change in an instant. One morning, while walking past the luggage carousel, Olivia stopped, her heart quickening. A man, wearing a nondescript jacket, was fumbling through his bag, seemingly in a hurry. But there was something about his movements, too rushed, too anxious. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She watched him closely, her instincts kicking in. And that's when she noticed it, the way he kept glancing over his shoulder, the slight twitch in his hand as he pulled out a small object wrapped in a dark cloth. Rex, who had been walking at her side, suddenly stopped, his ears pricking up. His sharp gaze followed the man's every move. Olivia's heart skipped a beat as she realized the man wasn't just a traveler. He was carrying something dangerous. Without thinking, her hand reached for her radio, signaling the security team. The calm that had settled around her moments ago shattered like glass. The scene unfolded in slow motion. Olivia, Rex, and the man stood in stark contrast. Two survivors, aware of the dangers that still lingered, and one who hadn't yet learned the lessons of the past. The security team arrived moments later, but the tension hadn't broken. The man had been watching them, his posture stiff as he glanced nervously toward the exits. Rex growled, low and menacing, the hairs along his spine rising. Olivia didn't need to say a word, Rex knew. As they approached the man, Olivia saw his hand shift, pulling the object from his bag. A small metallic object, a device she instantly recognized. It was one of the same tubes they had uncovered months ago, the ones that had started it all. The same scent of metal filled the air, and her stomach twisted with dread. Without hesitation, she ordered Rex to stay close. He obeyed immediately, his body tense, ready. Olivia's eyes met the man's, the weight of the moment hanging between them like a dark cloud. "What's in the bag?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with authority. The man's eyes darted to Rex, then back to Olivia. His lip curled into a smile that was far too cold to be genuine. "Nothing you need to worry about," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. In that split second, Olivia knew. This was no coincidence. The past wasn't over yet. It had simply been waiting, hiding in the shadows, biding its time. The operation wasn't just a one-time event. It was ongoing. And the man before her was a messenger, an unwitting pawn in a game far larger than he realized. But Olivia wouldn't let him finish what he had started. In the haze of the airport, Olivia felt the years of experience flood her senses. She had seen death in its many forms, the violence, the cruelty, the unexpected horrors. But nothing had ever shaken her like the moment she found herself standing before a threat that wouldn't go away, even after everything she had fought for. The man's hand trembled as he fumbled with the device, his eyes wide with panic. "You don't understand. It's too late already." Without warning, Olivia rushed forward, pushing the man away and slamming him against the nearest pillar. The device, still clutched in his hand, rattled against the wall as Olivia restrained him, using all the force she had left. Rex, sensing her urgency, stood guard. His protective instinct kicked in, with a fierceness that sent a surge of pride through Olivia. Together, they were a force of nature, unstoppable, relentless. Olivia's breath came in sharp gasps as she forced the man's hand open. The device slipped from his fingers and landed on the ground with a dull thud. For a moment, everything froze. The airport around them hummed with the sound of life, indifferent to the battle unfolding in the shadows. But Olivia knew that their fight was far from over. The battle against the shadows of the past, against the people who would never stop, who would always try to rebuild what had been broken, had just begun again. The airport security team arrived in force, securing the man and ensuring the area was safe. But even as they carted the man away, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling of the ground shifting beneath her feet. Rex stood by her side, his eyes never leaving her, his loyalty unspoken but understood. It was as if, in that moment, they both realized something. They weren't just fighting for the lives of strangers. They were fighting for the future, for the world they had yet to fully rebuild. As the sun began to set, casting a soft golden light over the airport, Olivia took a deep breath. The storm had passed for now, but she knew better than to think it was over. The world was still fractured, still vulnerable. And in the silence that followed, Olivia understood one thing. No matter how far the shadows stretched, no matter how many threats lay ahead, she and Rex would stand together. Because the fight had never been just about survival. It had been about making sure that, even in the darkest of times, there was always a flicker of hope, always a way forward. And they would find it together. It had been weeks since the confrontation at the airport, and the world, though still fragmented, had somehow returned to a fragile calm. The phone calls, the interrogations, the endless paperwork, all were behind her now. Olivia sat alone in her apartment, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup, the steam rising gently. The silence felt different now. There was no longer the overwhelming noise of danger, the adrenaline of the chase, the constant hum of uncertainty. But in that silence, something new began to gnaw at her. The weight of the knowledge she carried was heavier now, the truth of what they had prevented still sinking in. The scope of the operation, the lives it could have shattered, the lives it had already touched, it was overwhelming. And yet, there was no victory in the aftermath. only more questions lingering in the spaces between breaths. Rex, lying at her feet, shifted slightly, his eyes watching her with that knowing, ever-loyal gaze. He had never needed words to understand her. His presence alone was enough, but even now, as she sat in the quiet apartment, it felt like the battle was far from over. Did we really stop them? She murmured to Rex, her voice soft, unsure if she even expected an answer. Rex's tail thumped softly against the floor, a small comfort in the stillness. The doorbell rang, its sharp chimes snapping Olivia from her thoughts. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of who could be calling at this hour. As she stood and moved toward the door, her mind raced. But when she opened it, she was met with a face she hadn't expected to see. "Olivia," Lucas said, his voice heavy with something unspoken. "Can we talk?" Without waiting for an invitation, he stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room before settling on her. The air between them felt thick, like there was more he wanted to say than he was willing to let out. They sat across from one another in the living room, Rex curled up at Olivia's feet, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Lucas' hands were clasped tightly together, his shoulders slumped. He looked tired, drained in a way that spoke of more than just physical exhaustion. "I know what you're thinking," Lucas began, his voice quiet. "That the job's done, that you've done enough. But Olivia, there's something more." He paused, looking away as if weighing the words he was about to speak. Olivia's heart began to race. She had always trusted Lucas, but there was something in his eyes now that unsettled her. She braced herself, uncertain of what was coming. "What is it?" she asked, her voice sharp despite the calm exterior she tried to maintain. "The network." Lucas' voice cracked slightly. "It's not over. The man we caught at the airport, he wasn't alone. He was just a small part of a much larger scheme. We've been getting reports, Olivia. They're already regrouping." Olivia's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, everything around her seemed to freeze. The sense of peace she'd tried to build, the illusion that they had stopped the storm, all of it came crashing down. "They've already moved, haven't they?" she whispered. Lucas nodded, his jaw tight. "We thought we stopped them, but this is bigger than we thought. They've been moving their operations underground. The people who were behind this, they've vanished, but the work, it's still happening." Olivia's mind spun, her heart thumping in her chest. "So, what now? Are we just supposed to keep chasing shadows forever?" Lucas shook his head, his expression pained. "We're not going to stop. We'll find them. We have to." But Olivia wasn't so sure. She knew that stopping one operation didn't mean the end. It never did. The cycle was endless, a game of cat and mouse that stretched far beyond the limits of what she and Rex could handle alone. It was a fight she wasn't sure they could win, not without sacrificing more than they already had. And yet, the thought of giving up, of walking away from this, felt impossible. "I didn't sign up for this," Olivia muttered under her breath, her eyes staring into the distance. But the truth hit her like a wave. She had already signed up. Years ago, the moment she chose this path. The job, the fight, it was a part of her now, as much as the scars on her heart. The days that followed were a blur of action and uncertainty. Olivia found herself once again at the center of a whirlwind, her every move calculated, every step carefully considered. The weight of the world pressed on her chest, but she couldn't stop. She couldn't leave it all behind. Rex, too, had returned to his role as her partner, his body healing from the wounds it had sustained, but the look in his eyes had changed. There was something new there, something darker, a reflection of the battles they had fought and the battles they still faced. But even as they worked together to track down leads, to piece together the broken remnants of the network, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a fight for justice. It was a fight for something deeper, something she couldn't name, but knew she had to protect. Every lead they followed seemed to end in a dead end. Every breakthrough was followed by a deeper mystery. And all the while, the shadow of the operation loomed over them, growing stronger, more insidious with every passing day. But Olivia was no longer afraid. There was no fear in the darkness. There was only the resolve that had hardened in her over the years, the drive that pushed her forward. no matter the cost, and Rex. He stood by her side unwavering, as always. The bond between them had deepened in ways words couldn't explain. He was more than a partner now. He was her anchor in the storm, her reminder that no matter how far they fell into the abyss, there was always a way back. It was late one night when the breakthrough finally came, a slip of information that Olivia had almost missed in the haze of exhaustion. The data, buried in a string of codes, led them to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The location had been flagged, but it was the sudden surge of urgency that drove Olivia to act without hesitation. The night was cold, and the streets were empty. The only sound the hum of their vehicle's engine as they made their way toward the unknown. Rex was beside her, his presence both comforting and empowering. This was it. This was the moment they had been working toward. The warehouse stood dark and quiet, an abandoned structure that could have been mistaken for any other. But Olivia knew better. She had been here before. The stillness, the sense of danger lurking just out of view. The air was thick with anticipation as she and Rex entered the building, the only sound their footsteps against the cold concrete floor. As they moved deeper into the warehouse, Olivia's pulse quickened. And then, through the shadows, she saw them, the people behind it all. The ones who had never stopped, who had waited for their moment. And as she stepped forward, gun drawn, Rex at her side, she knew one thing: this was the end of the beginning. The final chapter of their fight. They would stop them, no matter the cost. But even as they prepared for the final confrontation, Olivia could feel a shift within her. The fight had changed her, shaped her into someone new, someone stronger. She wasn't just a handler anymore. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a protector, and she was ready. As the first light of dawn stretched over the horizon, the soft warmth of the sun began to seep into the cold, desolate warehouse. The shadows, once long and foreboding, now shrank in the face of the light, retreating into corners, leaving only the clarity of what had been accomplished. Olivia stood there, her heart still racing from the intensity of the final confrontation, but the adrenaline was slowly ebbing, leaving behind the deep satisfaction of knowing that the fight had ended. Rex, his fur matted and his body showing signs of the struggle, stood beside her, his posture calm yet resolute. His eyes, once filled with the sharpness of vigilance, were now softer, a quiet understanding in them as he stood in solidarity with his handler. Together, they had faced everything the world had thrown at them, and they had come out on top. Olivia's hand rested on Rex's back, her fingers brushing through his coat, grounding her, reminding her that they were still there. Still standing, still alive, still together. He had been her anchor through every storm, and now, as the sun broke the darkness of the night, she realized that it wasn't just about surviving the chaos. It was about finding the strength to rise again, to find peace after the battle. She looked out over the barren landscape that surrounded them, the vast emptiness punctuated only by the growing light. It was a new day, and with it came the promise of something different. No more hidden dangers lurking in the shadows. No more late-night calls, no more fear of what might come next. They had earned this moment, this fleeting moment of calm. But as the air warmed and the sky shifted from muted gray to a soft, welcoming pink, Olivia's mind couldn't help but wander back to all they had endured. The months of uncertainty, the betrayals, the constant struggle to stay ahead of an unseen enemy, the weight of the decisions she had made. They had been heavy. The scars, though invisible to the eye, would always remain. They were etched into her soul, reminders of the price paid to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. She knew it wasn't just the network they had dismantled. It was a part of her too. A part of her that had been shaped by the darkness, molded into someone who understood the value of trust, loyalty, and sacrifice. The truth had cut deep, but it had also freed her, freed them both. As the sun broke free from the horizon, the warmth of its rays touched Olivia's face, the light gentle against her skin. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking in the stillness around her, the soft breeze that carried the scent of fresh earth. The world felt different now, softer somehow. But she knew better than to think the road ahead would be without its challenges. "What now?" she whispered, her voice barely a murmur. The question had no immediate answer, but she wasn't expecting one. Rex, ever faithful, let out a low whine, nudging her hand as if to say, "We move forward." Together, a small, knowing smile tugged at Olivia's lips. It wasn't the first time Rex had reminded her of the simplicity of their bond. No words were needed between them. There were no promises to make, no grand declarations to speak. They had already made those promises when they first became partners. Every step they took, every fight they faced, was a reaffirmation of their commitment to each other. "I think we've earned a break, don't you?" Olivia said, her voice steady now, full of resolve. Rex wagged his tail in agreement, as if to say, "Yeah, we've earned it." Olivia turned away from the rising sun and looked down at her partner, her protector. The bond they shared had carried them through everything, from the depths of danger to the moment of victory, and now to this fragile peace. There was no one else she would rather walk beside, no one else she trusted more. "I'll never forget what we've been through, Rex," she murmured, almost to herself. "But I think it's time to move forward." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting golden light across the landscape, Olivia knew that the past would always be a part of her. It would shape her decisions, inform her choices, and remind her of the battles fought and the lives lost. But it would no longer control her. The future was hers to decide, and with Rex by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. They walked out of the warehouse, side by side, their steps in sync, their purpose clear. The world was still out there, waiting for them to make their mark, but for now there was peace. There was quiet, and in that moment, that was all they needed. The sky above was painted with the soft hues of morning, a reflection of the promise of a new beginning. It wasn't just the sun rising, it was Olivia and Rex stepping into the light, into the future. The world had changed, and they had changed with it. But through it all, one thing remained unbroken: the bond they shared. And in the end, that was all that mattered.